The first time Marina felt true fear was on her wedding night. She stood at the grand doors of the cold and silent bedroom, her heart pounding like distant thunder in her ears. She wore a simple white dress that clung to her trembling frame. It was supposed to be a joyous day, but tears had streaked her cheeks for hours on end. Across the room stood Victor Sinclair, the ruthless millionaire she had been forced to marry. His gray eyes glinted with a hunger that made her knees quake. She had never felt so vulnerable, so stripped of her own will, as when she looked into those piercing eyes. She could not forget the moment she was told she had no choice. Her father, burdened with debt, had brought this man into their lives without warning. It had happened so fast. An offer was made, a contract was signed, and just like that, her fate was sealed. Marina, only 19 years old, had never known the taste of a man's kiss, let alone been anywhere close to being someone's wife. She clutched her hands at her sides, nails digging into her palms, as Victor motioned for her to come closer. Every movement in that room felt thick with tension. The heavy drapes blocked most of the moonlight, giving only slender beams of silver across the bed. Her stomach churned from fear. She felt like a lone deer cornered by a predator, and there was no way out. The bedroom door was closed behind her with a slow creak that seemed to echo. When Victor finally stepped forward, the sound of his shoes against the marble floor made Marina flinch. There were no kind words, no gentle introduction. He studied her face like she was an object he had purchased, and was now checking for flaws. She heard her own breath rattling in her throat. "Take off your veil," he said, his voice firm, leaving no room for argument. She did as she was told, arms shaking as she reached up. Her dark curls fell around her shoulders. She was a proud black woman who believed in standing tall, yet now she found herself wishing she could vanish. But she could not. This was her wedding night. Her lips felt dry, so she swallowed, but that did nothing to calm her. Victor's large hand tilted her chin up. "I like your eyes," he whispered, almost as if he wanted to test her reaction. She dared not move away, uncertain what might trigger his anger. She did not speak. She waited, silent as a statue, while he circled around her. The tension grew until she felt it might snap inside her. He suddenly placed a hand on her shoulder, leading her to the edge of the bed. Her heart dropped. She wanted to protest, to scream that she was not ready, to beg for more time. But she felt sure that no one would come to her rescue. Everyone who might have stood up for her had already shrugged away her pleas. "Sit," Victor commanded. She sat down slowly, trying to keep her spine straight. Her eyes flitted to the door, but she knew she could not escape. There was a swirling mixture of fear, confusion, and a small drop of anger, all coiling inside her chest. He stood above her for a moment, his expression unreadable. She could see that he was handsome in an aloof way, with sharp cheekbones and well-groomed dark hair. She had heard many rumors about him, that he was cold-blooded in business, that he crushed people's dreams if they got in his way, that his heart was as frozen as the Arctic Sea. Some whispered of cruel bargains he used to keep families under his control. Marina had never believed such tales until she found herself on the receiving end of his offer. Finally, he exhaled, stepping away as if deciding something. "Wait here," he said in a low tone. Marina watched him go toward the door. When it closed behind him, she felt her whole body sag with trembling relief. She feared what he intended, but at least for one moment, she was alone. She tried to gather herself. Every nerve felt on edge. She could barely process that she was now Mrs. Marina Sinclair, wife to a man she hardly knew but already despised. She could not forget the last words her father had spoken to her. "Marina, you have to do this. We owe him everything. Our family will be ruined if you say no." That memory alone tightened a knot in her stomach, stirring resentment within her. She remembered the panic of that day, when men in sharp suits had come to the small house where she lived with her family, carrying a letter of foreclosure, a stack of legal papers, and a message. The message was simple. Unless Marina agreed to marry Victor, Her father's debts would be called in, their home, their belongings gone. Her father's health had been in decline, and the stress made it worse. Faced with the risk of losing everything, her father pleaded with her. She could never say no to him, not after he raised her alone in a world that was seldom fair to them. But the wedding itself had been rushed and joyless. She had worn a second-hand wedding dress that Victor's staff had fitted to her frame. She had walked down the aisle, with tears threatening to spill from her eyes, feeling the weight of everyone's stares. Her father had not even been able to stand. He watched from a wheelchair, his pale face tight with grief and guilt. By the time the vows were said, Marina's mouth was dry. She had managed only to whisper her "I do" under the sound of her pounding heart. And now here she was, perched on the edge of the huge bed with its satin sheets. Silence pressed in on her. She thought about running, about leaping up and racing out of the room. But where would she go? Victor had guards. He had money and influence that reached far beyond her humble world. She felt trapped, like a bird in a cage. Her breath caught when Victor came back. She expected him to lock the door, but to her surprise, he didn't. Instead, he walked over to a small table. On it stood a vintage bottle of wine and 2 glasses. Marina wondered if he expected her to drink. She flinched when he looked her way, the glass in his hand. "Do you want some?" he asked, his voice surprisingly subdued. She shook her head, not trusting herself to speak. Victor drank alone, taking slow sips as if he was thinking deeply about something. Then he turned to her, his gaze lingering on her figure. The intensity made her shiver. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Marina wondered what would happen next. Would he demand his marital rights right away? Would he terrorize her with cruel demands? She had heard stories. Her mind would not stop conjuring up the worst possibilities. Her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. Victor set his half-finished wineglass down. He came to her side and lifted her hand, tracing the ring on her finger. The wedding band felt cold and heavy. She found herself swallowing again, half expecting him to say something scathing. But to her surprise, he only let out a quiet sigh. "You are mine now," he said. "I am not a patient man, Marina. We both know what kind of arrangement this is. I suggest you learn to live with it." She forced herself to meet his gaze, though everything in her wanted to look away. She hated him in that moment, what he stood for and what he was turning her life into. But she also felt confusion creeping in. Did he want a lifeless union, held together by fear and blackmail? Would he always view her as an object or a trophy? "You forced me into this," she whispered, her throat tight. "I never wanted to marry you." His eyes flickered, a slight hint of something that might have been regret, but it vanished in an instant. "Your father owed me a debt," he said simply. "This was the only way." Marina stared at their hands. His palm was warm against her skin, but the rest of him felt as cold as stone. She fought the urge to pull away. She remembered the heartbreak in her father's eyes, the pleas that left her with no real options. Guilt weighed on her chest. She could not even blame her father fully. He had been desperate, trapped in a cycle of debt that no honest man could hope to settle. Victor lifted her chin again. "You should rest," he said in a softer voice. "We have time." She did not reply. She could barely breathe. Though he was not being cruel at that exact moment, the power he held over her was absolute. She stared at the walls of the luxurious room, noticing the tall mirrors, the sparkling chandelier, and the plush velvet curtains. Everything screamed of wealth. Yet, it felt more like a prison cell than any place she could call home. That night, she lay curled on one side of the bed, still in her wedding dress. Victor remained on the other side, a barrier of silence between them. She did not sleep. Every so often, she heard him shift, but he did not touch her. She wondered if he expected to claim her when dawn came. The dread wound her insides so tight she nearly felt sick. The shadows danced on the wall until morning light poured in, marking the first day of her life as Mrs. Marina Sinclair. Though she did not fully understand what the future held, one fact was certain. She could no longer pretend that she was free, and that fear was just the beginning. Sunlight crept across the bed, and Marina slowly opened her eyes. Her neck felt stiff from the awkward position she had slept in, if she could call those frantic snatches of rest sleep. She rolled onto her back, blinking against the bright rays. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then she caught sight of the lavish bedroom furnishings, and her heart sank. She saw that Victor was already gone. She let out a shaky exhale. Her head swam with questions. How long would he keep her here? Would he make her fulfill every duty expected of a wife right away? She sat up, looking down at the crumpled white dress bunched around her legs. Her eyes burned from the tears she had shed the night before. A soft knock on the door startled her. Marina scrambled to her feet, unsure what to do. Before she could speak, the door swung open a crack, revealing a middle-aged woman with a gentle face. She wore a neatly pressed blouse and skirt, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. "Good morning, Mrs. Sinclair," the woman said in a quiet tone. "My name is Harriet. I'm the head housekeeper. I came to see if you need any help." Marina's cheeks heated. She was not used to people addressing her so formally. "Yes, thank you." Harriet gave a kind smile and stepped inside. She carried a tray with tea, toast, and fresh fruit. "Mr. Sinclair asked me to bring you breakfast," she explained, setting the tray on a small table near the window. Marina swallowed. She was too nervous to feel hungry, but she managed to thank Harriet anyway. The older woman then handed her a folded dress. "This is something for you to wear today," Harriet said, "until we can have the rest of your wardrobe arranged." Marina nodded, hugging the dress to her chest. It was a simple, pale blue garment, more comfortable than the stiff wedding gown she wore. She wondered if Harriet knew that this marriage was a forced arrangement. She suspected everyone in the house probably had some idea, but no one dared say it out loud. When Harriet left, Marina stared at the breakfast. She poured a little tea into a cup. Her hands shook, and the tea nearly splashed over the side. She set the cup down quickly, heart thudding. She wondered what Victor was doing. Did he expect her to find him? Should she stay put until he summoned her? She bit her lip. She did not want to cower in this room forever. Cautiously, she sipped the tea, hoping it would steady her nerves. It was soothing, and she felt a wave of warmth spread through her. She nibbled on a piece of toast, her appetite mild at best. Then she rose and changed out of the wedding dress, carefully folding it. The new dress fit comfortably, and she realized she had no shoes, except the heels from yesterday. She put them on anyway, thinking it best not to wander barefoot. Finally, summoning all her courage, she stepped into the hallway. The Hauseno mansion was enormous. She saw a long corridor with numerous doors, each leading to unknown rooms. The walls were decorated with expensive paintings and gold-framed mirrors. She walked slowly, taking in the quiet atmosphere. Her heart pounded at every turn, afraid she might run into Victor unprepared. Before long, she reached a wide staircase that curved down to the ground floor. The marble steps seemed to glow under the morning light. She descended carefully. When she reached the bottom, a tall man in a butler's uniform greeted her politely. "Good morning, Mrs. Sinclair," he said with a small bow. "Mr. Sinclair is in the dining room. He asked me to direct you there when you were ready." Marina swallowed hard. So, Victor was expecting her. She nodded and followed the butler down another hallway, passing by large windows that overlooked a beautiful garden. Normally, she would have admired the flowers and the trimmed hedges, but her mind was too crowded with nerves. Finally, they reached the dining room. The butler opened the door, gesturing for her to enter. Stepping inside, Marina saw Victor seated at the head of a long table. He was reading something on his tablet. His dark hair was brushed back, and he wore a crisp suit. At the sound of her footsteps, he lifted his gaze. "You're awake," he said simply, setting the tablet aside. He motioned toward a seat near him. "Come sit." Marina could not quite look him in the eye. She slowly approached and took the seat he indicated. She clasped her hands in her lap, trying to ignore the pounding of her heart. The tension in the room felt heavy again, though perhaps less suffocating than the night before. "You slept in your wedding dress," Victor observed, his tone betraying no emotion. She nodded, finding no easy words in response. She felt a twinge of embarrassment at how disheveled she must have looked. Victor cleared his throat. "Harriet says you didn't eat much. You should take care of yourself. I need you healthy." His statement was cold and blunt, but it also contained a tinge of concern. Marina could not decipher what it meant. She realized that this was her first face-to-face conversation with him in daylight. He appeared more approachable in the light, but there was still a distance in his eyes that reminded her of a closed door. She found her voice. "Why do you care?" she asked quietly, her words trembling on the edge of defiance. He raised an eyebrow, as though surprised she dared question him. "Because I paid a lot for you." The words cut her. She felt anger well up inside her, mingled with shame. She was too stunned to speak back. Her vision blurred with tears she fought to hold back. Victor saw her reaction and shifted in his chair. "I'm not trying to hurt you," he said in a measured tone, though his words still stung. "But we both need to be realistic. This marriage is a business deal for me. Your father's debts are cleared. In exchange, you belong to me. It's not love, and I won't pretend otherwise, but I expect you to uphold your end of the bargain." Marina pressed her lips into a thin line. She wanted to lash out, to say that she was not an object, to remind him that forcing someone into marriage was a terrible crime of the heart. But she remembered her father's tears and his illness, and she stayed quiet. She understood that her defiance might only make her situation worse. Victor watched her with a calculating stare. "I assume Harriet gave you something to wear. Good. There will be more dresses delivered this afternoon. You can choose what you like." She nodded, the tension in her shoulders growing. She felt strange hearing about picking out dresses as if that were some special treat. None of it could make up for the fact that she was here against her will. He continued, "You won't be locked in your room. You can walk around the house and garden as you wish, but don't try to leave the grounds without my permission. That's not allowed." His voice remained calm, but the warning was clear. He expected her to stay put under his control. She clenched her hands. "Can I see my father?" she whispered, forcing herself to sound calm. "He's not well." Victor paused, as though considering. "He can visit once he's better, or I might allow you to visit him if there's a good reason. For now, it's not necessary." Marina's heart squeezed. She wanted to see her father more than anything, but she could tell that Victor saw no urgency. He was the one who decided what was necessary. She despised it. Suddenly, Victor rose from his seat. Marina flinched slightly, but he only gathered his tablet and walked around the table. Standing behind her chair, he placed a hand on her shoulder. The touch was light but made her stomach twist. She did not want to accept it, but she also feared pulling away. "I have work to do," he said, his breath stirring her hair. "Make yourself at home, but do not leave the property. Tonight we'll talk more about expectations." With that, he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Marina stared at the empty doorway, a storm of emotions raging inside her. She felt powerless and humiliated. All she could think of was how she hated feeling trapped. Yet, she could not deny that somewhere deep inside, a tiny thread of curiosity tugged at her. What if Victor Sinclair was not entirely what he seemed? That afternoon, Marina tried to find small corners of comfort in the mansion. She wandered the halls, cautiously turning the knobs of doors that were not locked. Many were empty guest rooms, each decorated lavishly. Some were storage rooms filled with crates and old furniture. There was a large library as well, with tall shelves packed tight with books. Marina's spirits lifted slightly at the sight of so much knowledge. She had always loved reading, though she doubted she had much focus for it now. As she ran her fingers over the spines of the books, Harriet entered, looking hesitant. "Mrs. Sinclair," she greeted softly. The staff would like to measure you this afternoon for new dresses, if that's all right." Marina sighed, but agreed. She was not sure what else to do. Harriet led her to a spare bedroom that had been set up like a small workshop. A tailor and 2 assistants bustled around with measuring tapes and pins. They measured her height, bust, waist, and hips, scribbling notes and chatting quietly among themselves. Marina stood still like a mannequin, her thoughts drifting. She wondered if her father was at least free from fear. Knowing the debt was paid must have been a weight off his shoulders. But did he understand the price she was paying? Guilt and worry gnawed at her insides. Part of her felt resentment because he had not found another way to solve his problems. Another part of her pitied him deeply and wanted to protect him. When the tailoring finished, Harriet offered to show Marina around more of the mansion. She gave a small nod, following quietly. Harriet took her to the back of the property, where wide glass doors opened onto a sunlit garden. Lush green lawns and vibrant flowers stretched out, looking like something from a painting. Fountains trickled quietly, and manicured hedges lined neat walking paths. It felt strangely peaceful. Marina inhaled the fresh air, stepping outside carefully. The warmth of the sun on her skin made her close her eyes for a moment. She recalled the tiny garden she once tended back home, where she grew a few flowers and herbs by her bedroom window. It was humble compared to this grand space. Still, those memories carried love and care that this place lacked. But now, she lived in Victor's world of wealth and cold deals. She felt like a trespasser, not a resident. As she wandered along a path, Harriet following a few steps behind, she spotted a greenhouse off in the corner. "What's that?" she asked, pointing. Harriet smiled. "That's the greenhouse Mr. Sinclair had built a few years ago. He invests in agricultural research. You'll find different exotic plants there." Marina's interest piqued. She walked closer. The greenhouse walls were made of shining glass. She could see tall plants and bright flowers inside. The door was unlocked, so she stepped in. A wave of humidity and the scent of wet earth hit her nose. She breathed in deeply, feeling a bit more at ease among the greenery. She noticed a small desk with pots and gardening tools. It surprised her to think that Victor might have some gentle hobby like growing plants, but then again, perhaps it was for business. Everything in his life seemed to revolve around profit. Feeling Harriet's watchful presence, Marina moved to leave. Yet, she wished she could hide there for hours, away from the mansion's oppressive atmosphere. She turned back to Harriet, offering a weak smile. "Thank you for showing me around." Harriet nodded. "If you need anything, please let me know. The staff are here to help." They walked back to the mansion, passing a few guards along the way. The security presence was not overwhelming, but it was enough to remind Marina that she was under watch. She entered the house, her mind swirling with uncertainty about what would happen when evening came. Would Victor claim her fully as his wife? Would he demand a show of obedience? She swallowed hard, pushing those thoughts away, but they lingered in her mind. That night, Marina found herself sitting stiffly in the same bedroom again. She had eaten dinner alone, since Victor never appeared. She assumed he was busy with work. Harriet had said he was often away handling business deals. A part of her felt relief that she did not have to face him, but the quiet tension of waiting was also agonizing. Finally, at around 9 in the evening, she heard the door open. She looked up. Victor entered, shedding his suit jacket and loosening his tie. He regarded her with an expression that was difficult to read. For a moment, the only sound was the soft rustle of his clothing. Her pulse hammered in her ears. He stepped closer, his gaze wandering over her form. She sensed that he was trying to decide how to proceed. Was he going to make demands? Would she resist? The questions buzzed in her head. But to her shock, he pulled a chair from the corner and sat in front of her, arms resting on his thighs. He seemed less tense. If she did not know better, she might have believed he felt a trace of guilt. "How was your day?" he asked, almost casually. Marina blinked, taken aback by the normalcy of the question. "It was fine," she mumbled. "Harriet showed me around." Victor nodded. "Good." Another pause. He rubbed his temples. "Look, Marina, I know this arrangement isn't easy for you, but we both have to accept it." She stared at her hands, remembering every detail of how she ended up here. Her heart felt too heavy for words. She had no idea what response he expected. He went on, "I don't intend to hurt you, but I will not tolerate defiance. If you cooperate, you might find that I'm not as ruthless as people say." A part of her wanted to scoff at that, yet she sensed if she angered him, he might snap. She decided to remain calm. "What do you want from me?" He studied her face. "For now, I want you to adjust. Stop looking for a way out, because there isn't one, and trust that I'll hold up my end of the deal. Your father is taken care of, so you don't need to worry." She bit her lip. "He's sick. I just want to see him." Victor sighed, looking slightly frustrated. "We'll talk about that soon. He's stable, correct? My doctors check on him as needed." Marina froze. She did not know he had sent doctors. She wondered if it was an act of pity or a way to control her father as well. "Yes, he's stable," she finally said. For a moment, Victor said nothing. Then he stood up, moving to sit next to her on the bed. She tensed, eyes wide. His presence was overwhelming in the small space. Her mind flashed back to the previous night, to her fear of what he might do to her. He reached out and brushed a strand of her hair away from her face. "Marina," he said quietly, "you're my wife now. In time, we will share everything that a husband and wife do. But I see you're not ready. That's fine for tonight." Her eyes darted up to his. She caught a flicker of sincerity, though she struggled to trust it. Relief washed over her, followed by confusion. She had expected him to demand her body, yet he was telling her to wait, giving her a temporary reprieve. "Thank you," she managed, her voice trembling. Victor nodded. He stood up again and headed for the door. "Get some sleep," he said. "We'll talk more tomorrow." Then he left. Marina remained on the bed, heart pounding. She tried to calm herself, but her thoughts spun in all directions. She did not know how to feel about his sudden kindness, if she could even call it that. All she knew was that each passing day in this house brought new questions, and she was nowhere close to figuring out the answers. The next few days followed a tense pattern. Victor was often busy with work, leaving Marina to wander the mansion or the gardens. Harriet and the other staff maintained respectful behavior, offering help when needed, but never prying. Marina was relieved not to be constantly reminded of her situation, but the looming question remained: when would her husband finally claim her as he said he would? During this time, she also learned more about Victor's empire. He owned vast businesses, shipping, real estate, and even an investment firm that stretched across continents. Harriet mentioned that the greenhouse was part of his investment in agricultural technology. Marina saw no trace of sentimentality from him about it. He simply liked to explore profit from all fronts. On the 5th day of her stay, Victor finally invited her to join him for dinner. She arrived at the dining room, feeling anxious. The table was set for two, with candles flickering softly. She took a seat. Moments later, Victor stepped in, wearing a navy suit and a solemn expression. He sat down across from her, and the staff began serving them. The first minutes were spent in stiff silence, broken only by the clink of silverware. Marina made an effort to swallow a few bites, though her appetite was small. She observed Victor from beneath lowered lashes. He ate calmly, as if there was nothing unusual about having dinner with a wife he had coerced into marriage. At last, he spoke. "I've arranged for you to see your father tomorrow." Marina's head snapped up. "Truly?" She felt a burst of hope. "Yes, he'll be brought here. My doctors say he's well enough to travel. He'll spend a short time with you. I have a private medical team to look after him while he's here." "Thank you," she said quietly. She hated that she had to rely on his permission, but her relief outweighed her pride in that moment. Victor nodded. "I expect you'll feel more at ease once you see him. Maybe after that, you'll stop looking at me like I'm a monster." She lowered her gaze. I don't know how else to look at you. You forced me into marriage. That isn't something that goes away easily." His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. They finished the main course in silence. Marina could not guess what was on his mind, but she sensed that he was used to being in control. He probably hated that she despised him. Yet, he seemed unwilling to show weakness or regret. When dessert arrived, she mustered her courage. "Victor, why did you want me specifically?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. He paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. Then he placed it down. "Your father owed me a debt. There were other ways to settle it, but this one appealed to me." Marina frowned. "But why? There must have been plenty of options. Why marry someone you don't love?" He watched her carefully. "I have my reasons." A frustrated sigh escaped her. "That's not an answer." He arched an eyebrow. "You want a clearer answer? Fine. People talk about me, calling me ruthless. They also say I'm heartless. In my world, it helps to have a wife to present a softer image to society. I need an heir, eventually, and I wanted someone untainted by all the greed and politics in my circles. Your father's situation gave me a straightforward way to achieve that." Marina's cheeks grew hot at his brutally honest words. She wanted to slam her hands on the table and shout that she was not some broodmare or ornamental piece, but her anger stuck in her throat. She realized that his logic was as cold as she expected, and there was also an odd sense that he found her purity or innocence appealing in a twisted way. "So, I'm just something you acquired," she murmured, tears prickling her eyes. His expression hardened. "I told you, I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not here to give you sweet words, but you're free to make this union less painful by cooperating. I don't wish to harm you." Marina clenched her fists on her lap, tears threatening to escape. She felt small, humiliated, and cornered. She placed her napkin on the table, not trusting herself to stay any longer. "I'm not feeling well. May I go to my room?" He regarded her for a moment, then waved a hand in dismissal. She stood up, her legs shaky, and walked out, each step feeling heavier than the last. She hurried back to her bedroom, locked the door, and let the tears flow. She sank onto the bed, hugging herself, feeling the sting of Victor's cruel logic. Yet, beneath her tears, a small spark of indignation began to burn. She could not live as a caged bird forever. There had to be a way to find her own strength, even in this forced marriage. Early the next morning, Marina dressed carefully, feeling nervous about seeing her father. Harriet had told her he would arrive by midday. She paced the corridors, unable to sit still. When at last she heard the sound of a vehicle outside, she rushed to the foyer. Victor was there, standing with his hands in his pockets. Two men helped her father out of a car and pushed his wheelchair up the ramp into the house. Marina's heart lurched when she saw how pale he looked. She ran to him, tears forming in her eyes. "Papa," she whispered, kneeling beside his chair, hugging him gently. Her father's eyes shone with relief. "Marina, my precious girl," he rasped, voice weak. He glanced up at Victor with both gratitude and fear. "Thank you, Mr. Sinclair, for letting me come." Victor nodded, maintaining an impassive expression. "I'll leave you to your daughter for now. A nurse will be around if you need anything." With that, he walked away, leaving them some semblance of privacy. Marina and her father were guided to a quiet sitting room, where Harriet served tea. As soon as they were alone, her father took Marina's hands. "My little girl," he said, tears glistening in his eyes. "I'm so sorry." She shook her head, fighting the lump in her throat. "Papa, are you okay? How do you feel?" He coughed softly. "I'm weak, but I'm better than before. Mr. Sinclair's doctors are skilled. They've given me treatments I couldn't have afforded on my own." He paused, anguish twisting his features. "But at what cost? Marina, I never wanted you to sacrifice yourself like this." She lowered her gaze. "It's done now. I can't change it. As long as you're safe, it's worth it." He squeezed her hands shakily. I wish I could have found another way. I failed you as a father." "Don't say that," she whispered, tears rolling down her cheeks. She glanced around to ensure no one was listening. "Tell me, Papa, does it seem like Victor is treating you well, at least with your health?" Her father nodded. "Yes, I have nothing to complain about for my treatment. He's paying for medicine and therapy. I'm getting better slowly." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "But I worry about you. Is he unkind?" She bit her lip, thinking of Victor's cold, calculating behavior. "He's not physically hurting me," she admitted. "He's distant and controlling, but so far he hasn't forced himself on me. I don't trust him, though." Her father's eyes glistened with sorrow. "Be careful, Marina. If you can find any happiness in this, please do. But if not, we'll find a way out eventually." She forced a small smile. "I'll try," she said softly. They spent some time chatting about her old life, the small joys of home, and her father's health. It felt good to be with him, even if the conversation was heavy with regret. She saw how tired he was, so after a while, Harriet gently reminded them that rest was needed. Her father promised to visit again or stay if Victor allowed it. She hugged him goodbye, tears on both their faces. When he left, Marina felt a flood of sadness wash over her. She stood in the foyer, watching the car pull away. A sense of loneliness sank in. This mansion, with all its luxury, remained an empty shell without genuine warmth. As she turned to go back inside, she found Victor standing near the staircase, arms crossed. He studied her with a mixture of curiosity and something close to pity, but she refused to meet his gaze for long. "He looks better," Victor commented. "My doctors say his progress is slow but steady." Marina nodded, her voice tight. "Thank you for letting me see him." He tilted his head. "I told you I would. I'm not trying to keep him from you. I'm not a complete monster." She said nothing, not wanting to argue. Instead, she walked away, heading to the library where she might hide among the books and gather her thoughts. She heard Victor sigh behind her, but he did not follow. That evening, as Marina sat alone in her room, she found herself thinking about the greenhouse. Something about the living, breathing plants had given her a sense of calm that she desperately needed. Deciding she could not bear the suffocating walls any longer, she left her room and made her way through the halls. She spotted a couple of guards, but they did not stop her. She stepped outside, letting the cool night air brush against her arms. A half-moon hung in the sky, casting silver light over the garden. Crickets chirped softly. She walked past the hedges and fountains until she found the greenhouse door. It was unlocked, so she slipped inside. The warm, moist air greeted her, carrying the scent of earth and blossoms. Marina walked between rows of exotic plants, their leaves shimmering under the greenhouse lamps. She touched a few petals gently, careful not to damage them. Her heart felt a little lighter in here. She took a deep breath, trying to rid her mind of the day's tension. A movement behind her made her spin around. Victor stood near the door, hands in his pockets, his gaze fixed on her. The realization that he had followed her set her heart racing. She instinctively took a step back, uncertain why he was here. "You like plants?" he asked, his tone neutral. She nodded silently. He walked closer, his footsteps echoing on the greenhouse's tiled floor. When he stood a few feet away, she noticed he looked tired, as if he had been working late. "I've never really taken an interest in this place," he admitted, glancing at the rows of foliage. "My business partners run the agricultural part. They send me progress reports, but I don't read most of them in detail." Marina brushed a leaf with her fingertips, feeling a small flutter of emotion. "It's a shame," she said softly, surprising herself by how easily she spoke her mind. "There's life here." Victor frowned, as though considering her words. "So you find comfort among these plants?" She shrugged, trying not to reveal too much. But she couldn't deny the sense of ease the greenhouse brought her. They're living things, growing each day. They don't care about money or power. They just exist. He stayed quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I used to think everything in life revolved around power. Maybe I still do. But looking at this place, I can see there might be other values. Marina was surprised by his statement. She glanced up at him, searching his face for signs of sarcasm. But he seemed sincere. A strange energy passed between them. She felt her guard slip just a fraction. Why are you here, Victor? She asked softly. He hesitated. I came to check on you. I noticed you left the house. I wondered where you went. A small part of her found his concern suspicious, but another part felt oddly touched. She turned away from him, focusing on the nearest plant with large, drooping leaves. Thank you, she said after a pause, though she wasn't sure what she was thanking him for, maybe for letting her have this moment alone. He took a step closer. She could sense his warmth even before he reached out. Slowly, almost gently, he rested a hand on her shoulder. Her body tensed, but she did not pull away. I'm not used to being kind, he confessed in a low voice. My life has been about winning, controlling, and succeeding. I know you hate me, and you have good reason to, but perhaps in time you'll see that I can be different. She swallowed, her heartbeat thudding loudly in her ears. She did not dare turn to face him. The conflicting emotions she felt, fear, anger, and a strange stirring of sympathy, confused her. But she did not move from under his hand. I don't know, she whispered. I can't forgive what you did. You took away my choice. His fingers curled slightly on her shoulder. I know, he said, sounding almost regretful. But give it some time. Maybe we can find something better than hatred. Without another word, he let go and walked toward the door, leaving her alone with the silent plants and the echo of his words. She let out a shaky breath. For a fleeting moment, she had sensed a vulnerable side of him. She didn't want to feel sympathy for a man who had forced her into this life. Yet, his brief display of remorse or honesty left a small imprint on her heart. Still, she was not ready to release her anger. She stood among the greenery, thinking about the fragile life of each plant. They grew despite their environment, reaching for light and water. Maybe she could learn from them, find a way to survive, and possibly even thrive in these forced circumstances. Little did she know that the fragile bond forming between her and Victor would soon face trials greater than either of them could imagine. Suspicion, secrets, and deeper betrayals were waiting in the shadows, ready to test their uneasy alliance and the possibility of a future that neither of them had planned. Marina left the greenhouse that night with her emotions in turmoil. She could still feel the warmth of Victor's hand on her shoulder. It was the first time she had sensed some hint of kindness beneath his cold exterior. But she could not allow herself to forget how he had trapped her in this marriage. She did not want to be swayed by a few gentle words and a soft touch. She tried to sleep, yet her mind refused to be quiet. She found herself thinking over and over about what he said. Maybe we can find something better than hatred. Could that really happen? If he was truly capable of compassion, then why force her into marriage at all? As dawn broke, Marina rose from bed and got dressed. She stepped into the hallway, intending to go downstairs for breakfast, when she nearly collided with Victor in the corridor. She froze. He was wearing a fitted white shirt, sleeves rolled up as if he had been working already. For a second, they simply stared at each other. "Good morning," he said in a calm tone, lowering his gaze slightly to meet her eyes. "Morning," she managed, her voice tight. Victor hesitated, then cleared his throat. "I have a business meeting in the city later, but I thought we could talk before I leave." Marina's heart fluttered with anxiety. She glanced around, noticing the housekeeper, Harriet, standing a short distance away. Sensing the tension, Harriet silently excused herself. Marina nodded, then motioned for Victor to continue. "Let's go somewhere private," he said, gesturing toward the study at the end of the hall. She followed him, each step causing her pulse to quicken. The study was a cozy room lined with dark wooden shelves. A large window overlooked the side garden. Victor closed the door behind them. He walked to the tall window and stood with his back to her, looking out at the plants below. "I'm planning to host a small gathering next week for some investors," he began, turning to face her. "As my wife, I'd like you to be there." Her stomach tightened. She had not considered public appearances yet. Of course, he would expect her to act the role of the supportive spouse. She realized she had little choice. "All right," she said, keeping her voice steady. "What do you need me to do?" Victor rubbed the back of his neck. "Just stand by my side, greet the guests, and look presentable." He paused. "I know you don't want to be in this position, but people will talk if my new wife never appears in public. They'll sense something is off, and I can't afford that right now." She understood. His image was everything. If rumors began to swirl that their marriage was a forced deal, it might damage his reputation and business. She felt a surge of anger that his reputation mattered so much more than her feelings, yet she swallowed it down. This was the reality she was stuck with. "I'll do it," she agreed quietly. Victor nodded, relief flickering in his eyes. "Good. I'll have Harriet bring you some dresses to choose from. If you need anything else, let her know." Marina shifted her weight, wishing she could ask for her freedom, or at least an end to the tension. But that was impossible. She turned to leave, her hand on the doorknob, when his voice stopped her. "Marina." She faced him again, noticing the crease in his brow. He looked uncertain, almost vulnerable. "Yes?" "I'm trying," he said softly, surprising her with a tone she had never heard from him before. "I can't undo the bargain I made with your father, but I'm trying to make our lives bearable." She felt her throat tighten. Words hovered on the edge of her tongue, words about how he had torn away her choices. But she saw something in his expression that made her pause, like he was reaching out for understanding. Caught between anger and reluctant pity, she simply nodded, then stepped out of the study. That afternoon, Marina roamed the mansion's many rooms, hoping to distract herself. She found solace in the library, where she flipped through different books without really focusing. Her thoughts kept drifting back to that brief moment of sincerity in Victor's eyes. She hated that she could not easily box him into a single category, monster or savior. He was both, she realized, and that only made things more confusing. Eventually, she decided to visit the greenhouse again. The plants had offered some sense of calm, and she needed that now. She pushed open the glass door, stepping into the warm air. The scent of moist soil reminded her of life and growth, things that gave her a small spark of hope. As she moved deeper among the plants, she heard a faint sound. It took her a moment to realize it was footsteps echoing outside the greenhouse. Feeling uneasy, she turned in time to see a stranger peering through the glass. He was a tall, lean man in a dark suit. His posture was tense, his eyes narrow. When he noticed her looking, he quickly turned and walked away. A chill ran through her. She recognized most of Victor's employees by now, but she had never seen that man before. Marina stepped outside, glancing around the garden. He was gone, vanished, as if he had never been there. She wondered if she should tell Victor about the intruder. But then she remembered how strange it would sound. Maybe it was just another one of Victor's business associates. Still, something about that man's stare felt ominous. Days passed, and Marina prepared herself for the gathering. Harriet brought several dresses for her to try on. They ranged from simple evening gowns to more decorative pieces. Marina finally chose a sleek, off-the-shoulder black dress that fit her figure well but wasn't too revealing. She wanted to look respectable, not flashy. On the evening of the event, the mansion filled with guests. Men and women in expensive suits and designer gowns chatted, their laughter echoing through the grand halls. Marina stood at Victor's side, forcing a polite smile as he introduced her to important investors and business partners. She nodded and greeted them with the manners her late mother had taught her. Despite her calm facade, her nerves rattled each time someone's gaze lingered too long. She felt like an exhibit, her role as Mrs. Sinclair under silent scrutiny. As she moved through the crowd, she caught bits of whispered conversation. "Did you hear he married so quickly? I wonder what changed." "She's beautiful. A bit shy, though. Lucky girl to snag such a wealthy man." Marina fought the urge to roll her eyes at the notion of luck. If only they knew the truth behind this marriage. Occasionally, she felt Victor's hand on her elbow, guiding her gently, as though reminding her to keep the performance going. Then, in the middle of greeting a group of investors, she saw that same tall, lean man from the greenhouse slip into the room. Her heart skipped a beat. He stood near the back, talking with someone else, but his eyes flicked toward her. She felt an uneasy chill. He seemed oddly familiar now, though she couldn't place him. Something about his presence set her on edge. She leaned closer to Victor and whispered, "Who is that man in the black suit? The one near the far wall?" Victor followed her gaze, and his expression darkened. "That's Calvin Lowe," he answered quietly. "He's an investor, of sorts. We have some unfinished business." Before she could ask more, the group around them demanded Victor's attention. He turned back to the conversation, masking whatever displeasure he felt. But Marina could sense tension radiating from him. She suspected Calvin's unfinished business with Victor was not pleasant. Throughout the night, she caught glimpses of Calvin gliding between guests, wearing a thin smile that never reached his eyes. At one point, she stepped away to fetch a glass of water from a side table. She was about to head back when she nearly ran into Calvin himself. He stood a few inches away, blocking her path. "Excuse me," she murmured, trying to move around him. He smirked. "Mrs. Sinclair, we haven't met properly. I'm Calvin Lowe." She forced a polite nod. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Lowe. If you'll let me pass." He didn't budge. His gray eyes raked over her, making her skin crawl. "I hear you're new to Victor's life. Quite a sudden marriage." Marina stiffened. She did not want to discuss personal matters with a stranger. "That's our business," she said, keeping her tone firm. Calvin's lips twisted. "Yes, of course. But be careful who you trust, Mrs. Sinclair. Victor is not known for his loyalty." He let out a low chuckle. "We'll speak again, I'm sure." She stared at him, anger flaring. "I have nothing else to say to you, Mr. Lowe." Without another word, she walked away, heart pounding. She found Victor on the other side of the room, finishing a conversation. The moment he saw her face, he frowned, stepping closer. "What did he say to you?" Victor demanded quietly. She glanced over her shoulder, making sure Calvin was out of earshot. "He warned me not to trust you," she said softly. "He hinted that you're disloyal." Victor's jaw clenched. "Stay away from him. He has a grudge against me. We've crossed paths in business deals, and it's become complicated." Marina searched Victor's face. "What kind of grudge?" He shook his head. "It's better you don't know the details. Just be careful around him. He's dangerous." Her heart fluttered with worry. "Then why is he here in your home?" Victor's eyes flicked over to where Calvin stood, talking to some important guests. "He's here because refusing him entry would raise questions I don't need tonight. But trust me, he won't get what he wants." Marina could see that Victor was holding back some deeper conflict. She wanted to press for answers, but the conversation around them did not allow any privacy. Reluctantly, she let the matter drop. For the rest of the evening, she kept her distance from Calvin. Victor also stayed watchful, but as the party continued, she felt a gnawing unease. There were too many secrets swirling in this world of wealth and power, and she was caught in the middle. When the last guest departed, it was near midnight. The mansion fell quiet once again. Marina and Victor stood in the foyer, both feeling the strain of the long event. She rubbed her temples, exhaustion weighing on her. "I'm going to bed," she said, offering Victor a small nod. He touched her arm gently, stopping her. "Marina, thank you for helping tonight. I know it wasn't easy." She managed a thin smile. "Good night, Victor." She walked to her room, kicking off her shoes the moment she closed the door. As tired as she was, sleep did not come easily. She lay awake, thinking about Calvin Lowe's warning and the shadows in Victor's eyes. Was Calvin simply stirring trouble, or was there truth to his words about Victor? A few days later, Marina found a routine of sorts. She spent mornings reading or walking in the garden, trying to keep her nerves steady. Victor was often in and out, consumed by meetings and phone calls. Sometimes, in the evenings, they shared a brief dinner. Their conversations were polite, almost gentle, though they never ventured into deep matters. In this uneasy truce, Marina realized that Victor was indeed trying to treat her with a certain kindness. He never forced her into the marriage bed, though she could see in his eyes that he was aware of her lingering fear. He seemed to be waiting for her to relax her guard. At the same time, she doubted he was a man who would wait forever. Late one afternoon, as she rested in the library, Harriet approached, looking concerned. "Mrs. Sinclair," she said softly, "Mr. Sinclair asked me to bring you to his office right away. There's something urgent." Marina's heart gave a leap. She hurried after Harriet, questions spinning in her mind. When she entered Victor's office, she found him standing behind his desk, tension visible in every line of his body. He held a piece of paper, his knuckles white from gripping it so tightly. "What's wrong?" she asked, closing the door behind her. He didn't speak at first, just handed her the paper. She read it and felt a chill run down her spine. It was a threatening note, the words typed in bold, hostile letters. "I know your dirty secrets, Sinclair. Your new wife won't protect you when the truth comes out. Enjoy your happy home while you can." There was no signature, but beneath the warning was a single initial. C. Marina's eyes flicked up to Victor. "Calvin?" Victor nodded grimly. "Most likely. He's been circling my business deals, spreading rumors. Now he's resorting to threats. He wants to damage my reputation and my holdings." She swallowed. "What does he mean by dirty secrets?" Victor's jaw tightened. "He's implying that if the details of our marriage arrangement became public, it could cause a scandal, not to mention other business tensions we've had in the past." Marina set the paper on the desk. "What do we do?" Victor let out a long breath. "I'm tightening security. For one, I also have lawyers who can handle any false accusations. But I worry Calvin might try something more direct. He's desperate and reckless." A wave of anxiety hit her. "You think he'd try to harm you or me?" Victor's eyes blazed. "I won't let him touch you." He reached out, placing a hand over hers. "You're under my protection now, I promise." She stared at their joined hands, a swirl of emotion rising in her chest. She hated that she needed protection, but she also felt oddly comforted by his determination. He won't let anything happen to me. Yet, she still remembered Calvin's smirk, and it left her uneasy. "Victor," she said quietly, "if Calvin reveals that we had a forced marriage, what will happen?" He exhaled. "It won't be good. My name will be dragged through the mud. We could face legal problems, especially if it's proven that your father's debt was used to pressure you. And you—" He paused, unable to finish. She nodded, understanding the unspoken words. She might be questioned, humiliated in public. She could even lose what little stability she had if the courts or the press turned the story into a scandal. Marina's hand trembled beneath his. She lifted her gaze to see the seriousness etched in his face. "I don't want that," she admitted, fear lacing her words. "Not for you, and not for me." A strange warmth flickered in Victor's eyes. "Then we'll stand together. This marriage might not have begun with love, but we can keep others from destroying what we do have." She found it hard to swallow around the lump in her throat. There was a choice here, she realized. She could remain distant, refusing to help him, or she could choose to stand by his side. A small voice in her heart told her that if she walked away, she would only be punishing herself as well. For all his faults, Victor had shown a willingness to protect her and care for her father. Steeling herself, she squeezed his hand. "All right," she said, "I'll do what I can." Victor nodded, relief clear in his eyes. He seemed on the verge of saying more, but then the phone on his desk rang, shattering the quiet moment. He released her hand and answered it, his posture instantly shifting back into business mode. Marina stepped away, letting him take the call. But a soft voice in the back of her mind asked a question she wasn't ready to face. Am I beginning to care about him? Over the next week, the tension in the mansion grew heavier. Security guards became a common sight, patrolling the halls and the grounds. Victor hardly slept, busy with damage control and calling in favors from powerful contacts. Marina saw him less and less, though she sometimes heard his low voice late at night, talking on the phone in his study. One evening, she was awakened by shouts coming from downstairs. She jumped out of bed, heart hammering, and threw on a robe. She raced to the foyer and found two of Victor's guards restraining a struggling figure. Her blood ran cold when she saw that it was Calvin Lowe, half-crazed, eyes gleaming with rage. Victor stormed into the foyer, fury written on his face. "How did he get in here?" he barked at the guards. One guard muttered, "He bribed the new guy at the gate. By the time we realized, he was already in." Calvin gave a vicious grin. "Your security is a joke, Sinclair. You think you can hide behind these walls?" Marina hovered on the staircase, watching the scene with horror. Calvin's gaze slid to her. And there she is, the little wife. Poor Marina, you have no idea who you're married to, do you? "Shut your mouth!" Victor growled. "You're on private property. Get him out of here." Calvin twisted out of the guard's hold for a moment. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a folded stack of papers. Before the guards grabbed him again, he hurled the papers onto the marble floor. They scattered around like fallen leaves. "There!" Calvin shouted. "You want to see a real scandal? Go ahead, read them. Copies of your father's debt agreements, the forced marriage contract, everything. It's all ready with my lawyer, too. Your days of control are numbered, Sinclair." Victor's eyes blazed with raw anger, but he kept silent, refusing to show weakness. The guards finally pinned Calvin's arms behind his back and dragged him to the door. He continued to shout curses and threats until he was forced outside. The door slammed shut, leaving an echoing silence. For a moment, no one moved. Then Victor bent down and gathered the scattered documents. Marina came closer, dread twisting in her stomach. She recognized her father's name on some of the pages. Others listed her own name and the exact terms of the marriage agreement, including the debts and the payoff amounts. Her hands shook as she reached for one page, reading the cold, formal words that stated she was to be wed to Victor Sinclair in exchange for the complete forgiveness of her father's debt. It was like a punch to the gut, a cruel reminder of how she had become a piece of property. She glanced at Victor, who stood rigid, fists clenched around the papers. He looked ready to explode with fury. Slowly, he turned to her, his eyes apologetic and full of worry. "I'm sorry," he said hoarsely. "I never wanted it to come to this." Marina didn't know what to say. She felt trapped between disgust at seeing her life spelled out in legal terms and a strange sympathy for the man in front of her who was now just as cornered. If Calvin made these documents public, their secret would be exposed to everyone. The scandal would be massive. She would be humiliated, and Victor's empire could come crashing down. Harriet stepped into the foyer, her face pale. "Are you both all right?" Victor nodded stiffly. "Yes. See that the gate staff is replaced immediately, and make sure the perimeter is secured." Harriet hurried away to carry out his orders. Marina found herself standing there alone with Victor again. She tried to steady her breathing. Is he telling the truth? Did he already give these documents to a lawyer or the press? Victor sighed. "I don't know, but I have to assume yes. Calvin is ruthless in his own way." Marina's mind spun with panic. "Then what do we do?" He paused, gazing at her. Slowly, he lifted a hand and brushed his thumb across her cheek, as if trying to soothe her. Despite her fear, she found a certain comfort in his gentle touch. "I won't let him destroy us," Victor murmured. "Even if it means I have to come clean about everything. I can handle the fallout. But I need you to trust me, Marina. Will you stand with me even if this becomes public?" She felt tears prick her eyes. This was the last thing she had ever wanted, to be paraded as a victim of a forced marriage. But she looked into Victor's face and saw a man who was truly afraid of losing everything, including her. Whether she liked it or not, they were bound together. And she sensed that if she turned away now, Calvin would only grow bolder, harming them both. So she breathed in, gathering her courage. "Yes," she whispered. "I'll stand with you." Victor's shoulders sagged in relief. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her in an embrace that was both protective and desperate. She let herself lean into him, tears slipping free. She hated the situation, but she realized she no longer hated him with the same fire. Something had changed. She could feel it in the way her heart pounded in her chest. They stood there in the foyer, holding each other while the house settled into silence. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, in the middle of this forced union, they could find a kind of real partnership, even love, if they dared to hope. But outside those walls, Calvin was waiting, and the storm he would unleash could tear everything apart before it had a chance to grow. Marina woke the next morning with the memory of Calvin's threats burning in her mind. She could still see the scattered pages on the marble floor, listing every grim detail of her forced marriage contract. The weight of possible public shame pressed on her. What would happen if everyone discovered the truth? When she finally emerged from her bedroom, she found the mansion in a flurry of activity. Guards were stationed at every entrance. Staff members hurried around with anxious faces, whispering about the intruder who had broken in. Marina made her way downstairs, feeling a somber energy clinging to every wall. She found Victor in the study, hunched over his desk. Papers were spread in front of him as he spoke on the phone in a tense voice. The moment he noticed her, he ended the call and ran a hand through his hair. "Marina," he said quietly, "did you sleep at all?" She hesitated before shaking her head. "Not much," she admitted. "It's hard to rest with everything going on." Victor's expression softened. He stood and guided her to a chair, taking a seat opposite her. "I'm sorry," he murmured. And for the first time, she felt a sense of genuine regret in his voice that went beyond the usual politeness. She studied his face. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, and his shoulders seemed tense. Despite the way their marriage began, she couldn't ignore his efforts to protect her. "Have you found out anything new about Calvin?" she asked. Victor exhaled, leaning back in his chair. "He's not answering my calls. My lawyers think he'll try to sell this story to a tabloid or hold it hostage until I pay him off. Either way, the result is the same. He wants to drag me into the mud." She rubbed her palms together. "Is there a plan to stop him?" "There are a few strategies," he said carefully. "We can try to discredit him, or we can file legal actions that stall any publication. But none of that is a guarantee." He paused, then reached across the desk to lightly rest his hand on hers. "I meant what I said last night. You won't be alone in this. If the worst happens, we'll face it together." Marina swallowed hard. "I'm afraid," she whispered. She hated admitting it, but the possibility of her private life becoming a public scandal was terrifying. She didn't want her father to see her face on magazines or news sites, labeled as a victim of blackmail and forced marriage. He was already weak. That kind of stress could break him. "I know," Victor said, his voice low, "but I won't let him destroy us." She felt warmth spread through her chest at his choice of words. "Us." A few weeks ago, he would have said me. Whether she liked it or not, they were becoming a team. But is that a good thing? She wondered. Before either of them could say more, Harriet knocked and stepped inside. "Sir," she said softly, "there's a phone call from Dr. Barnes about Mr. Roberts." Marina's eyes widened. "Mr. Roberts, your father." Without waiting for Victor's permission, she rushed forward. "Is my father all right?" Harriet offered a reassuring nod. "He's stable, but Dr. Barnes wants to talk with you directly." Victor handed Marina the phone, and she pressed it close to her ear. "Hello, Dr. Barnes?" "Hello, Marina," came the calm voice on the other end. Your father is doing better overall. The new treatments are helping, but he's been asking to see you again." Relief coursed through her. "That's good to hear. I want to see him too." Dr. Barnes continued. "He's still somewhat weak, but if you're willing to come by in the next few days, I believe a visit would do him good." Marina cast a glance at Victor, who was watching her intently. She realized she had to ask his permission to leave the mansion, a fact that twisted her stomach. However, she refused to let pride keep her away from her father. "I'll make arrangements," she said. "Thank you, doctor." She hung up, looking at Victor expectantly. "I'd like to see my father soon. Is that allowed?" The question tasted bitter on her tongue. Victor's expression flickered with guilt, but he nodded. "Of course. We'll go together. That way, I can make sure you're protected." She agreed, deciding not to fight him on the matter of security. If Calvin was desperate, he might use any chance to get to her or her father. The idea made her shudder. They went to visit her father 2 days later. He was staying in a small but comfortable clinic on the outskirts of the city. Victor insisted on taking his private car with tinted windows, followed by a second vehicle of security detail. As they pulled up, Marina's heart pounded with worry and relief all at once. Inside, her father sat propped up on pillows, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. Marina rushed to his side, tears gathering in her eyes. He looked frail, but there was more color in his cheeks now. "My girl," he said, reaching for her hand. "It's good to see you." She squeezed his hand gently. "How are you feeling?" "Better," he breathed. "Much better. The doctors say I'm stronger now. I owe that to Victor's support." He paused to glance at Victor, who stood a short distance away, hands in his pockets. Her father then looked back at her. "But what about you, Marina? How are you?" She swallowed, not sure how much she should share about the turmoil and threats. "I'm managing," she said carefully. She forced a small smile. "Things are complicated." Her father nodded, his expression turning serious. "I have eyes, child. I see the guards at the door, the tension on your face. You're worried about something." Marina considered brushing it off, but this was the man who raised her. She could not lie to him so easily. "There's a business rival causing trouble," she admitted in a quiet voice. "He's threatening to spread details about our arrangement." Her father's face paled. "The forced marriage?" Marina nodded. "Yes, he has documents that prove everything." Her father shut his eyes, breathing shakily. "Oh, my dear girl, I never wanted to bring you such pain." She hugged him gently. "Papa, please don't blame yourself. We did what we had to. Besides, Victor is trying to help now." She felt a twinge of odd loyalty to the man who had once seemed like nothing but a tyrant. It was hard to reconcile the Victor of then with the Victor of now. Her father looked at Victor again, who approached slowly. Her father extended a trembling hand. "Thank you," he said, voice cracking, "for looking after my daughter and for helping me get the care I need." Victor took his hand and shook it gently. "You're welcome," he said, calm and respectful. "I'll do everything in my power to protect her." Marina felt her heart twist. She believed him, or at least she wanted to. They spoke quietly for a while, discussing her father's progress and future treatments. Before they left, her father beckoned Marina closer. "You must be careful," he whispered, looking her dead in the eye. "Victor has money and power. Yes, but Calvin must have a reason to come after him so fiercely. Stay alert, my child." She nodded, kissing his cheek. "I will." On the ride back to the mansion, Marina stared out the window. The cityscape passed by in a blur of lights. Victor sat beside her, silent. She could feel the tension coiling in the space between them. At length, he broke the silence. "I know your father is worried. I don't blame him. If I were in his position, I'd hate me too." Marina turned to face him. "He doesn't hate you," she corrected. "He's grateful for what you've done for his health, but he's afraid I'll get hurt." A muscle in Victor's jaw twitched. "I understand." He paused, lowering his gaze. Marina, I won't lie. I've done things in business that aren't admirable. I've used threats, closed deals that ruined people's livelihoods. Calvin was one of those people. He tried to cheat me, and I retaliated. Maybe I pushed too far. She studied the sharp angles of his face, noticing a hint of regret in his eyes. Did you cheat him back? Not exactly, he said, but I squeezed him out of a major investment, leaving him nearly bankrupt. He recovered later, but he's held a grudge ever since. When I saw a chance to collect on your father's debt, I took it, thinking it was just another business move. He looked at her with a spark of sorrow. I never realized how it would change your life. At least, not until it was too late. Marina's chest felt tight. She had spent so long resenting him. Now, hearing him open up about his past mistakes brought her conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, and an odd compassion. And now Calvin wants revenge, she said softly. He wants to ruin you and me too, by extension. Victor nodded, his gaze flicking to the passing buildings outside. Yes, that's what he wants, but I won't let him win. She drew a shaky breath. And I'll do my best to help. Victor reached for her hand. She allowed him to hold it, warmth mingling with fear. They both knew this problem might not be solved by money alone. Calvin's desire for vengeance ran deeper than that. That night, Marina found it impossible to sleep again. She wandered the mansion in her nightgown, the long corridors quiet and dimly lit. Eventually, she found her way to the greenhouse, drawn by the comforting presence of living, growing things. She pushed open the glass door. Soft lights illuminated rows of exotic plants. She breathed in the thick, humid air, letting it soothe her nerves. Slowly, she walked between the rows, touching leaves and petals. She nearly jumped when she heard someone behind her. Turning quickly, she found Victor standing at the entrance, his hands in the pockets of his silk robe. Couldn't sleep either? He asked gently. She shook her head, feeling her pulse quicken. No, she whispered. He approached, standing beside her in front of a large plant with broad leaves. The overhead lights created faint shadows on his face. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet hum of greenhouse fans was the only sound. Finally, Victor turned to her. Marina, we've been living under the same roof for weeks now, caught up in threats and fear. But I want you to know something. He swallowed, his gaze earnest. I regret taking your freedom away. If I could go back, I'd find another way to settle your father's debt. But I can't change that now. She stared at the leaves, struggling to find words. The part of her that was still angry wanted to throw his regret in his face, to blame him over and over. But another part maybe, the part that had come to see the cracks in his armor, wanted to forgive. Victor, she began slowly, I never asked to be here, but I don't hate you anymore. I can't. You've shown me a side of yourself I didn't think existed. He exhaled, relief washing over his features. Thank you, he murmured. That means everything to me. Marina met his eyes. Her heart pounded with a different kind of tension now, one that made her feel strangely vulnerable. I'm not sure what this marriage is supposed to be, she continued, voice trembling. But I know I don't want it to be built on hate and fear. Victor stepped closer, his gaze fixed on hers. The warm light in the greenhouse highlighted the intensity in his eyes. We could build it on something else, he said quietly. We could try to start again. Her breath caught. She thought of the many nights she had spent cursing him in her heart. She thought of how gentle he had been lately, holding back his desires, respecting her boundaries. The swirl of emotions inside her was almost too much to bear. I'm willing to try, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He lifted his hand to her cheek, hesitating for a moment before he brushed his fingers along her smooth skin. She closed her eyes at the contact, feeling a mix of calm and electricity. Then, slowly, he bent his head and pressed a soft kiss to her forehead. She didn't pull away. Instead, she let him hold her, the tension in her body easing under the warmth of his arms. In that quiet sanctuary of plants and moonlit shadows, they stood for a long time, each finding a strange sense of peace in the other's presence. For once, the threat of Calvin and scandal felt distant. There was only the gentle rustling of leaves and the sound of their breathing. Eventually, Marina drew back, her cheeks flushed. Victor's gaze flickered, with a tenderness she had never seen before. She sensed a question there, an unspoken invitation. But instead of pressing for more, he stepped aside. "Let's go back inside," he said softly. "It's late." She nodded, feeling her heartbeat slow to a steadier pace. They walked out of the greenhouse together, side by side. For the first time, Marina felt like they were not just two people trapped in a deal, but perhaps two souls trying to find a better path. The next morning, Victor received a message that jolted them both from any fragile sense of peace. One of his trusted lawyers, a man named Elijah, called to warn him that Calvin was indeed close to selling the forced marriage story. A local tabloid was rumored to have the documents in hand, and they were preparing an exposé on Victor's dark secrets, including Marina's father's debt and the details of the marriage. Marina felt her stomach sink when she heard the news. "So, it's happening?" she asked, her voice shaking. Victor looked grim. "Unless we can stop it. Elijah is trying to delay them with legal threats, but it might not be enough." She wiped her damp palms on her skirt. "What if we came clean ourselves? Controlled the narrative?" Victor frowned. "That's an option, but it's risky. If we admit the marriage was forced, we might face legal repercussions. You could be viewed as a victim and He trailed off, jaw clenching. "I'd likely be charged with some form of coercion, and that's not even counting the public backlash." She bit her lip. "Still, at least it would be on our terms. We wouldn't be letting Calvin spin the story however he wants." He stared at her, clearly torn. His entire life was built on a reputation of power and control. Revealing his own wrongdoing would be a massive blow to his empire. Yet, if Calvin published his version, it would be even worse. Lies and partial truths could make the situation uglier. Marina reached for his hand. "Victor, I know it's hard, but if we hide, Calvin will use that as fuel. Maybe it's time to be honest." He studied her face, conflict raging in his eyes. After a tense pause, he gave a slow nod. "I'll call a press conference," he said quietly. "We'll tell the truth together." The day of the press conference arrived too soon. A small group of reporters gathered in the mansion's main hall, cameras and microphones set up. Marina's heart pounded in her chest as she stood beside Victor, waiting for him to speak. She wore a simple but elegant dress, her hands clasped so tightly they ached. Victor stepped forward, looking composed, though she could see the tightness in his jaw. He spoke clearly, his deep voice echoing through the hall. "Thank you all for coming. I have called this conference because certain rumors have begun to circulate, and I want to address them openly. I will not allow speculation to twist the truth." The reporters shifted, pens scribbling on notepads. Cameras flashed, capturing every flicker of emotion. Victor glanced at Marina, then continued. "It's true that Marina Marina Sinclair, married me to settle her father's debts. That debt was owed to me, and I used the situation to insist upon her hand in marriage. I did it without considering her feelings or her freedom. I regret that deeply." A low murmur ran through the crowd. Marina's breath caught, tears stinging her eyes. Victor was openly confessing, risking his name and fortune. He cleared his throat, pushing on. "Marina's father was gravely ill, unable to pay back what he owed. I exploited that. I admit it freely. But since then, I have come to realize how wrong I was. My actions hurt Marina, and I take full responsibility." He hesitated, then added, "We are working through our difficulties. I am asking the public to respect our privacy as we move forward." Another wave of whispers spread among the reporters. One reporter raised a hand. "Mr. Sinclair, do you fear legal consequences for your actions?" Victor's eyes flickered. "I'm prepared to accept the outcome, whatever it may be. What matters most is that Marina's voice is heard. Nerves trembled in Marina's stomach. She stepped forward. Every camera turned on her. She wanted to run. But she remembered the greenhouse, the gentle way Victor had held her, and the promise they had made to face this together. "My father's debt was real," she began, voice shaking. "When Mr. Sinclair proposed the marriage arrangement, I felt I had no choice. I won't let was painful and frightening. But over time, I've come to know the man behind the ruthless reputation. He's not perfect, and I'm still angry about how things began. But I see now that he is willing to change. I believe he can become someone better." Her words hung in the air, and she suddenly realized she was speaking from her heart. As the reporters fired more questions, Victor placed a steady hand on her arm, silently encouraging her. She could not predict how the public would react to this confession, but at least the truth was out on their terms. Within hours, the media exploded. News channels and websites buzzed with headlines about Victor Sinclair's forced marriage confession. Some commentators lashed out, calling for legal action against him. Others were sympathetic, noting that Marina spoke of him with cautious hope. Calvin Lowe's plan to expose them was thwarted in part because Victor and Marina had already told the story themselves. The scandal was still there, but with the truth laid bare, Calvin's attempts to add further shock value were diluted. He tried to paint Victor as a cruel abuser, but the more balanced coverage cited Marina's statement that things had changed. In the days that followed, Victor received several legal notices. There was talk of investigating the circumstances of the marriage. A few business partners pulled out of deals, fearing bad publicity. Stocks dipped. Tensions soared within the mansion. Yet through it all, Marina felt a sense of fragile peace. She was no longer hiding a dark secret, and Victor, though embattled, seemed almost relieved to face the consequences head-on. Rather than slinking into corners, he met with legal advisors, gave calm interviews, and refused to let Calvin's additional taunts get under his skin. One evening, after the frenzy had somewhat died down, Marina joined Victor in his study. He was on the phone with a board member, explaining the plan for moving forward. When he finally hung up, he turned to her with a tired smile. "They'll stay with me," he said quietly, referring to his board. "Most of them believe that I can weather this storm. It might take time, but it's not the end." She nodded, stepping closer. "And what about us?" she asked softly. His eyes searched her face. "I hope it's just the beginning," he murmured. Her heart fluttered. Gently, she reached out and took his hand. She didn't deny the sparks that danced along her skin when his fingers closed around hers. In the middle of all the chaos, she realized she wanted to stand at his side not just because she was forced to, but because she chose to. He gave a small, hopeful smile. Then, with a careful slowness, he leaned in and pressed his lips against hers. This time, she did not pull away or freeze in fear. She allowed herself to melt into the moment, the warmth of his mouth, the steady beat of his heart against her palm. When they finally broke apart, breathless and flushed, she rested her forehead against his. "This doesn't fix everything," she whispered, "but it's a start." Victor tightened his arms around her. "We'll fix it together." They stood in the quiet study, the shadows of evening gathering around them. Outside, the world still buzzed with news of the scandal. But here, in each other's arms, a new beginning took shape forged from regret, confession, and the fragile promise of real love. Victor and Marina woke up the next morning to a barrage of calls and messages. The press conference had sparked a whirlwind of commentary. Some people praised their honesty, while others condemned Victor for his use of coercion. A handful of online tabloids fueled the drama with sensational headlines. But amidst it all, Marina discovered a curious sense of calm in her own heart. They had done the right thing by telling the truth. There was relief in no longer hiding. Yet the fallout continued. Victor's board of directors scheduled an urgent meeting. Marina insisted on going with him, sensing that this would be a turning point in his business career. When they arrived at the high-rise building downtown, They walked into a large boardroom filled with a dozen executives who looked worried and tense. Victor took a seat at the head of the table, Marina at his side. Whispers swirled until the chairman, an older man named Mr. Parson, called for silence. "Victor," Mr. Parson said, folding his hands, "we've stood by you so far, but the scandal has hurt investor confidence. Our stock value has dipped further today. Our biggest concern is whether new revelations might surface that could harm the company's long-term stability. We need reassurance." Victor exchanged a quick glance with Marina. She gave him a small nod, wordlessly supporting him. He squared his shoulders. "I understand your concerns," he began. "I won't deny that I made a grave mistake, taking advantage of someone's misfortune. But I've been open about it now. There are no more secrets to reveal." "And what about Calvin Lowe?" another board member cut in. "He might continue to cause trouble." Victor's jaw tightened. "Calvin's power comes from secrets and blackmail. We have disarmed him by speaking the truth ourselves. If he tries to fabricate anything further, I'll handle it legally and transparently." Mr. Parson nodded thoughtfully. "I respect your candor. I won't hide that some of our members are still uncertain. But if we see real changes in how you conduct business and manage public relations, we may weather this storm." Victor took a deep breath. "I'm prepared to do exactly that." A low murmur spread among the executives. After more back-and-forth discussion, they agreed to give Victor time to prove that he could stabilize the company. The meeting ended on a cautious note, but Marina could see relief in the eyes of several board members. They might not approve of every choice Victor had made, but they recognized his ability to manage crises. As Victor and Marina left the building, reporters rushed forward with cameras. Questions pelted them about the board meeting and the future of Sinclair Holdings. Marina's heart thudded. Victor put a hand lightly on her back, guiding her toward the waiting car. "Any statement, Mr. Sinclair?" a journalist shouted. Victor paused, turning briefly. "The board has decided to stand behind our efforts to be transparent. We remain confident in the company's future." He offered no further comment and continued walking. Inside the car, Marina let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Victor squeezed her hand, a silent expression of thanks. That evening, Marina tried to distract herself by reading in the library. Over the last weeks, she had grown fond of the space. Books lined every wall, some old enough to smell faintly of dust and leather. She chose a novel at random, sinking into a plush chair near a tall window. But focusing on the pages proved difficult. Her thoughts drifted to Calvin Lowe. Where was he now? She imagined him brooding, plotting new ways to hurt Victor. Fear settled like a stone in her stomach. They had exposed the truth and taken the wind out of his biggest threat, yet he still seethed with vengeance. Just as she was about to close her book, Victor stepped in. He looked more relaxed than he had been over the last few days, though still carrying tension around his eyes. "Mind if I join you?" he asked softly. She gave a small smile. "Of course not." Victor took the seat opposite hers. He glanced around the library, a space he rarely used for leisure. "I don't think I've set foot in here to actually read a book in years," he admitted with a wry grin. "Too busy chasing deals." Marina found a gentle spark of humor in his words. "Maybe it's time you slow down." He considered that, resting his elbows on his knees. "You might be right." His gaze shifted to the novel on her lap. "What are you reading?" She held up the cover. It's a romance story, about two people who start off on the wrong foot but eventually come to understand each other. A faint smile tugged at Victor's lips. "Sounds familiar." She chuckled softly, warmth pooling in her chest. When the laughter died, she realized they were both staring at each other, a comfortable silence stretching between them. She took a breath. "Victor, how do you feel about everything? The scandal, your board, the news coverage? Us?" He leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly. "It's overwhelming," he confessed. "For so long, I believed in controlling every outcome, bending the world to my will. This is the first time I've had to surrender that control and face the consequences of my actions. It's Humbling. Marina reached out and placed her hand on his, stilling the restless movement of his fingers. It takes courage to admit that. He laced his fingers with hers. I also feel hope, he added quietly. Hope that we can turn this into something real, a marriage built on respect and maybe something deeper, if you'll allow it. She felt her heart flutter. I think I'd like that, she whispered. They stayed that way for a moment, hands entwined, breathing in sync. Then Harriet appeared at the doorway, clearing her throat politely. Mr. Sinclair, sorry to interrupt. One of your security guards at the gate has requested to see you. It seems urgent. Victor's brow furrowed. He rose from the chair, pressing a quick kiss to Marina's knuckles. I'll be right back. Marina paced the hallway, trying not to let anxiety take over. It was only a guard with an urgent message, yet every sudden interruption brought back the memory of Calvin sneaking onto the property. She made her way to the foyer, where she heard voices. Peering around the corner, she saw Victor talking to a young guard who looked tense and pale. What is it? Victor asked, voice low. There was a drone, sir, the guard said. It flew over the grounds, near the windows on the east wing. We tried to track it, but it got away. It seemed like someone was filming, maybe taking pictures. We checked the footage from security cameras, and it looks professional, definitely not a kid's toy. Victor cursed under his breath. Tell the rest of the team to stay vigilant. If it shows up again, I want it taken down. The guard nodded and hurried off. Marina stepped forward, concern etched on her face. You think it's Calvin? Victor's mouth was set in a grim line. He must be desperate. He's searching for anything else to use against me. Or us. A chill crept over her skin. Do you think he'll try something worse? Victor sighed. I won't underestimate him again. But I promise, Marina, I'll make sure you're safe. She swallowed, wishing the world would grant them some peace. All right, she said, her voice trembling. I trust you. He cupped her cheek. Thank you. The days that followed were filled with heightened security. Guards monitored the grounds around the clock. Drones were spotted once more, but they never lingered, darting away before they could be captured. The tension wore on everyone, including Harriet and the rest of the household staff. In the midst of this, Marina's father made steady progress in his recovery. Dr. Barnes reported that he might be able to move into a small, comfortable home soon, rather than staying in the clinic. Marina felt a glimmer of light at the Neuscher father could regain a sense of independence. Then, one afternoon, everything changed with a single phone call. Marina was in the middle of choosing new furniture for a spare room. She had decided to fill her time by personalizing a corner of the mansion when her phone buzzed. She picked it up to hear a voice she never expected. Marina, said a low, ominous tone, or should I call you Mrs. Sinclair? Her blood ran cold. Calvin, she breathed. A soft chuckle greeted her. Yes. Surprised I got your number? It wasn't hard, especially with certain staff members open to bribes. You know how money can bend loyalties. Her heart thumped painfully. What do you want? She managed. I have new information, Calvin sneered. Something that could tear Sinclair's company to shreds. This little forced marriage scandal is just the beginning. Victor has more skeletons in his closet than you can imagine. Marina gripped the phone. Why are you doing this? Haven't you caused enough harm? You think this is about harm? He hissed. He took everything from me, once my investments, my reputation. I clawed my way back, and now I will take everything from him, including you, if I feel like it. A wave of anger and revulsion swept through her. She glanced at the door, considering how quickly she could find Victor. I won't let you scare me, she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Calvin laughed, a hollow sound. Scare you? My dear, I'm not even trying yet. But I have an offer for you. Meet me, alone, and I'll hand over the evidence I've gathered against Victor. I'll let you decide if you still want to stand by him once you see the full extent of his sins. Marina's stomach churned. I don't believe you. Don't you? Calvin asked smoothly. You know Victor is capable of anything to protect himself. Weren't you a victim of his manipulation? Forced marriage, remember? She closed her eyes, trying to quell the rising panic. Even if he's done wrong things, You still want to cling to hope, he finished mockingly. How sweet. But if you want to know the truth, come to the abandoned dock near the old shipping yard on the outskirts. Tonight. No guards, no one else. Just you and the proof. Her breath caught. If I refuse? Then I'll make sure every media outlet gets the full story. Detailed evidence of other questionable deals. We're talking criminal-level accusations. His voice dropped to a menacing hush. What if the authorities come for Victor, and your father's medical care ends up compromised? Think carefully. Marina felt a rush of helpless fury. You're a monster, she spat. He only laughed again. I'll see you at midnight. Don't be late. The line went dead. Marina set her phone down with shaking hands. Her heart pounded so loudly she could hear the rush of blood in her ears. She knew going alone to meet Calvin was dangerous, maybe foolish. Yet she couldn't bear the thought of him leaking more damaging information, or worse, trying to sabotage her father's health care. She had come to love Victor, but she also worried there might be truths about him she still didn't know. She wrestled with indecision. Should I tell Victor? Part of her wanted to run straight to him. But Calvin had threatened that if she involved anyone else, the consequences would be severe. She had promised to stand by Victor. Would keeping this meeting a secret be another betrayal, or a necessary step to protect him? Hours crawled by. Dinner came and went. Marina barely touched her plate. Victor noticed her pale face and tried to ask what was wrong, but she claimed to be tired. She retreated to her room, waiting until the mansion fell quiet. Then, heart-hammering, she slipped out and requested a car from a junior staff member who didn't ask too many questions. She told him she was going to see a friend and wanted to travel alone for privacy. By the time she reached the old shipping yard on the edge of the city, it was nearly midnight. The scene was eerie. Abandoned warehouses loomed against the night sky, and the dim glow of a few flickering streetlights did little to cut through the darkness. Broken crates and rusted containers littered the pavement. In the distance, water lapped at the decaying dock. Marina parked the car, her hands trembling as she stepped out onto the cracked asphalt. A cold wind stung her cheeks. She glanced around, searching for Calvin. The silence pressed on her ears. Then footsteps. She turned to see his tall, lean figure emerge from behind a stack of shipping containers. Moonlight accentuated the sharp angles of his face. A mocking smile curved his lips. "So you came," he said softly. "Alone. Good girl." She folded her arms, trying to appear braver than she felt. "Let's get this over with. Show me what you have." He waved a folder in his hand. "All in here, and some of it is stored digitally. This is proof of questionable offshore accounts, under-the-table deals, and maybe worse, your husband's darkest secrets." Her throat went dry. "Why are you giving it to me?" He took a step closer, scanning her face. "Because I want you to see that your faith in Victor is misplaced. I want to break him piece by piece." She bristled. "I'm not your tool to use in some twisted vendetta." He shrugged, the folder still in his grasp. "Perhaps. But you're here, aren't you? Part of you must suspect that Victor is every bit as cruel as I say." She stayed silent, a swirl of doubt and loyalty tumbling inside her. Calvin's smirk deepened. "You want these documents? Fine. I'll give them to you on one condition. Leave him. Announce publicly that you're separating from him and refuse any further involvement. If you do that, I'll release some neutral statement and keep the worst secrets to myself. Victor can clean up the scandal, but his pride will be shattered when you walk away." Marina felt her chest tighten with anger. She realized Calvin's plan was to destroy Victor emotionally. It wasn't enough for him to reveal wrongdoing or sabotage the company. He wanted to see Victor lose his wife. And me? He doesn't care if I'm hurt in the process. She drew in a steadying breath. "No, I won't betray him like that." Calvin's expression darkened. Then you leave me no choice." He raised his hand and, to her horror, she saw the glint of a small pistol. "I was hoping to do this without violence, but you forced my hand." Marina's heart lurched. A spike of fear shot through her, freezing her limbs. She stared at the weapon, breath shallow. "Is he really going to shoot me?" Before Calvin could say another word, headlights blazed across the dock, accompanied by the roar of an engine. Both Marina and Calvin turned, blinded by the light. A sleek, black car screeched to a halt. The driver's door flew open, and Victor stepped out, fury etched on his face. "Get away from her!" Victor shouted, striding forward without hesitation. Calvin cursed under his breath, spinning around with the gun raised. "So you couldn't follow directions, could you, Marina?" Trembling, she realized that in her rush and nervousness, she must have left some clue. Or maybe the staff member had alerted Victor. Either way, he had found her. Relief and fear mingled together. Victor lifted his hands, trying to keep Calvin's focus. "You want me, Calvin. Leave her out of this." Calvin let out a bitter laugh. "Always the hero, Sinclair. I guess you do care for her more than I thought." He aimed the gun at Victor. "Too bad it's too late." In a split second, everything happened at once. Marina screamed. Victor lunged to the side, knocking over a metal crate. Calvin fired, the shot echoing like thunder across the dock. Sparks flew as the bullet ricocheted off the metal container. Victor ducked behind the crate, and Calvin adjusted his aim with shaky hands. Marina, heart pounding, looked around desperately for something any to help. She spotted a length of rusted pipe leaning against a nearby pallet. Fueled by terror, she snatched it up. As Calvin stepped forward to get a clearer shot, Marina mustered her courage and sprinted toward him. She swung the pipe with all her might, striking his arm. He yelled in pain, dropping the gun. It clattered on the pavement, spinning out of reach. Victor immediately rushed forward, tackling Calvin to the ground. The two men struggled, but Calvin was no match for Victor's fury. Within seconds, Victor pinned him, panting heavily. "Don't you ever threaten my wife again," Victor growled, his voice dangerous and low. Calvin glared up, hatred burning in his eyes. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. "You'll regret this, Sinclair," he hissed. "You can't keep your sins hidden forever." Victor tightened his grip, but Marina's voice cut through the rage. "Victor, stop," she said, breathing fast. "He's not worth it. The police can handle him." The sound of approaching sirens echoed across the dock, blue and red lights flashing in the distance. Marina guessed that the staff or Victor himself had called for help. Carefully, Victor released Calvin, who lay on the ground, seething in pain and humiliation. Marina scrambled to Victor's side, the pipe still gripped in her trembling hands. He turned to her, his features etched with concern. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, tears of shock threatening to spill. "No, I'm fine." She dropped the pipe with a loud clang. Victor pulled her into a tight embrace. She clung to him, her heart thudding wildly. In the background, Calvin swore under his breath as the wail of sirens grew closer. Police cars skidded to a stop. Officers leaped out, guns drawn, ordering Calvin to stay down. They cuffed his hands behind his back while he shouted accusations at Victor and spat out threats. A detective pulled Victor and Marina aside to take statements. Marina's limbs still quivered, her breath catching in her throat as she tried to piece together her words. Eventually, Calvin was hauled away, the folder of supposed evidence confiscated and bagged. Victor stayed close to Marina, never letting her leave his sight. Under the glare of police flashlights, they gave their accounts of what happened: the phone call, the threat, the gunshot, and how Marina struck Calvin to disarm him. By the time the ordeal ended, dawn's first light glimmered over the deserted shipping yard. Exhausted, Marina leaned against Victor's shoulder. He pressed a kiss to her hair, relief evident in the way he held her. "I can't believe you came," Marina whispered. "I followed you," he confessed. "I knew something was off when you disappeared. I had to make sure you were safe." Tears gathered in her eyes. "Thank you." Victor gently wiped her cheeks. Let's get you home." Back at the mansion, the staff buzzed with worry, but Victor sent them away so Marina could rest. He guided her upstairs, supporting her trembling form. They entered the bedroom, their bedroom now, she realized, and he helped her sit on the edge of the bed. She gazed at him, noticing the worry lines on his face and the sweat dampening his collar. "You saved me," she murmured. He brushed a hand against her hair. "You saved yourself. You fought back. I've never been more gratefuler, more proud." A shaky laugh escaped her. "I guess we both saved each other." Then her expression grew serious. "Calvin talked about some new proof of horrible things you've done. Was any of it real?" Victor took a deep breath, sitting beside her. He likely exaggerated. "There may be questionable deals in my past like the one with your father, but I haven't committed any serious crimes." If Calvin had actual proof, he would have revealed it by now. He relied on fear and half-truths. She nodded, relief washing over her. "I'm so tired of living in fear. I want us to move past all this." Victor reached for her hands, drawing her closer. "We will," he promised. "The police have him now. He can't hurt us again." Marina let out a long breath. She believed him, or, at least, she believed that Calvin's reign of terror was finally over. The forced marriage scandal might still cause ripples, but nothing could compare to the fear of facing Calvin's gun. Slowly, Victor leaned in, pressing a soft kiss to her lips. She melted against him, wrapping her arms around his neck. The kiss was tender, healing. No shadows of coercion or anger lingered. In that moment, it was just two people embracing after surviving a storm. When they broke apart, tears of relief glistened in Marina's eyes. "I love you," she whispered, startling even herself with how naturally the words came. Victor's eyes flashed with surprise and fierce joy. "Marina, I love you too." She felt her heart soar. All the turmoil, all the pain somehow, it had led them here, to an honest exchange of emotion that neither of them had expected in the beginning. They had battled fear and mistrust, but together they had found something real. In the weeks that followed Calvin's arrest, life shifted in surprisingly positive ways. The authorities charged him with attempted assault, trespassing, and illegal possession of a firearm. With Calvin safely behind bars, the drone incidents and threats stopped. Some of his alleged evidence turned out to be incomplete or forged. The genuine documents mostly confirmed deals that were shrewd or ethically questionable, but not criminal. The media storm began to settle once it became clear that no major crimes were committed. Meanwhile, Victor doubled down on making amends. He set up funds to help people whose livelihoods he had hurt in the past, including some of Calvin's former employees. He called it reparations for old sins, and while some business circles snickered, others applauded the new approach. The board of directors eventually gave their stamp of approval to keep him at the company's helm, impressed that his honesty and philanthropic measures restored some public goodwill. Marina's father moved into a cozy home near the city. Closer to the clinic he still visited for checkups. He grew stronger each day, smiling brighter every time Marina came by. When she told him that she and Victor had found genuine love in their marriage despite the rocky beginning, her father's eyes brimmed with happy tears. A few months later, on a warm spring evening, Victor surprised Marina with a simple, heartfelt proposal, a vow renewal. "We never had a real wedding day," he said, holding her hands in his. "I know we're already married, but I want to stand before you, free of debts and blackmail, and vow my love for you from my own heart." Marina's eyes misted with tears of joy. "Yes," she answered, smiling through her tears. "I want that too." They planned an intimate ceremony in the mansion's garden. Only close friends, trusted colleagues, and her father attended. There were no paparazzi or flurry of reporters, just soft music under the evening sky. Marina wore a flowing white gown, her curls adorned with delicate flowers. Victor donned a tailored suit with a gentle smile she had grown to love. In front of a modest arch draped in roses, they spoke vows that were no longer bound by contracts or debts. They pledged honesty, respect, and above all, genuine love. After they exchanged new rings, they shared a kiss that made the small gathering erupt in cheers. Marina's father clapped, his eyes shining. Harriet discreetly dabbed at her own tears. The staff, who had come to adore Marina, looked on with wide smiles. This time, Marina's tears were not from fear or sorrow, but from overwhelming happiness. When the ceremony ended, Victor led her to the dance floor, set up beneath glowing lanterns. They swayed to a soft melody, arms wrapped around each other. The night air felt cool against their warm cheeks. "You know," she teased, resting her head on his shoulder, "not everyone gets married twice to the same person." He chuckled, pressing his lips to her temple. "I guess we're special. We get a second chance." Marina thought about the long road they had traveled her, forced marriage to clear her father's debt, the cold fear on their wedding night, the anguish of living in a gilded cage, then the slow thaw, the shared secrets, and the final confrontation with Calvin. It felt like an entire lifetime compressed into months, yet here they were, forging a future that belonged to both of them. She lifted her gaze to meet Victor's. "I love you," she said again. No hesitation in her voice. He gazed back, eyes full of devotion. "And I love you," he answered softly. "Forever." Under the lantern's glow, surrounded by soft music and the gentle hum of the garden's nighttime life, they danced as husband and wife truly, this time knowing that their shared love was strong enough to face the darkest shadows and find the light.